يوم الدين أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This afternoon we have put together a session to give you the opportunity to have your questions answered by our scholars. Okay, so at this time I'd like to invite our scholars to the stage. Dr. Shabir, Sheikh Rahman, Dr. Munir, Sheikh Shafayat, and Sister Suzy. We can take any order, it doesn't matter.
As I mentioned before in one of my earlier talks, one of the loveliest things about this program today is at every corner I see the young boys and girls wearing the purple, whether it's a purple shirt or a purple scarf. I was like, I wish someone told me the color code. But wearing the purple and guiding and encouraging and saying, hey, what session are you looking for? I can lead you. This is what it means to empower our youth, to give them opportunities to lead, to carve out avenues where they can be an integral part of our community and society rather than relegating them to the sidelines. This is how we give them a voice, and this is how we do it collectively, while still maintaining the reminders of character and reminding our youth through the love of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the learning of the seerah, how to maintain that respectfulness towards the elders and yet still be heard, as the young Sahabis around the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be able to do.
I know we made a semi-policy here a little while ago that we'll have one answer per question, but because this is a very deep answer, a deep question, it probably takes some depth. In recent times, and I like to share it, in recent times, I've started having a little different vision on the issue of youths. Because of my 43 years of dawah experience, I have seen in the many years ago, youths are just there for a period of time, mostly, generally speaking, and as they get into their career, doctors and lawyers and professions and businessmen, they disappear. So they were youths and they disappear, and you don't see them again. So in my personal mission in Dawah, I started, instead of calling them youths, I call them students. And what I have noticed happening, like, we don't ever lose them, because a person can be a student from the cradle to the grave. So they keep loyal into the mission that you empower them into. See the point I'm getting at? They keep loyal, consistent and constant in the profession or the career or the area you get them into. Because, that's what I have seen in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He educated the people who came around him, young and old. And I don't think a youth is just a 16-year-old guy. I'm 60-ish. And I feel like 16. 60-ish. Believe me, I feel like 16. You ask the boys who move around with me, I came up with 7 youths. That's how I operate. I hang around young people, Dr. Rafiq, so I feel younger. Alright? But that's what I do, and you train these students so you don't, I like that part, so the imams and the elders do not feel threatened by these youths. Well, you will feel threatened when you train a youth, then he will become you. But if you make him a student, when he becomes you, you become better and more blessed. And you feel happy to see your student become you. But that's what you wanted. Like me, I'm not in Florida, I'm not always there, but my students, they lead, they're imams, they do all the salah, they run the show, and I don't care. That for me is a blessing. I can be in New York and get a blessing. I got about 7 of them there, and I'm telling you a living example. That's what I have noticed with youths, because I've been traveling all over the world, and I've seen a lot of youths. They were there and they're not there. As they get married and they get in their career, they disappear. Unfortunately, they got a valid excuse. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Best amongst you is he who teaches the Quran and learns the Quran and teaches it. So if you teach them that vision, you take the youths, teach them and guide them to live that. and they are empowered automatically in any career and field, and they will always be there. Even if they're in China, they'll be connected to your territory and be dynamic wherever they are to do what you taught them, and will not just be a use of your masjid and nobody other places. So that's my vision of empowering youths and making them future leaders, inshallah. I don't know if anybody else wants to share.
Sorry, I think we are going to break that policy. You know, I really found in the question a word that shouldn't be in the question. That's the word, threatened. Why should we feel threatened? I mean, when we really need to pass on something. In my last presentation, I used the example of the relay race that at Olympics, you know, every one of the 4 members team needs to feel part of that team, and every generation needs to start decelerating as we hand on the baton to the accelerating generation. We should encourage that. We should feel happy instead of the word threatened. I just don't like it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In fact, I'm the one who made the policy. If you make it, you can break it. No, it's a very important question. And the fact that for my generation, who is also 60-ish, we have passed through what that word means. So for us, it has a meaning. And that meaning put a whole generation out of circle, out of that circumference. And we were living in that time where you were told not to memorize Quran, for example. Because if you memorize and you forgot a verse or 2 of the Quran, you will go to hell. Later on we found out that it was challenging the authority. So if we look at religion in monetary terms or a job, it is threatened. But if we look at religion and Deen al-Islam as a mission, it is not a threatened. It is passing from one generation to another generation.
I think this was a question that the question wasn't asked fully. I did add the word threaten there, and there was a reason for it, because in our communities today we find that people feel that once the youth or the students, as Sheikh Shafayat said, they get to a certain level, they'll get us out. And we have no validity or we have no importance anymore. So what I was really looking for is to see how we can make sure that they live in cohesion and they cooperate and they work together for the benefit of Muslims and for the benefit of our communities. So that's why the word threaten was there. So in following up on that, based on the social conditions and issues affecting young Muslims, what can Masajid organization do to cater to the needs of young Muslims? And I guess here is where, if they do the right thing, they shouldn't be feeling that threat.
Yeah. So, as Dr. Munir is insisting that I answer, since I didn't speak in response to the first question, let me add my own sort of emphasis on the question of how youth can be empowered and what Masajid can do now in light of the second question to get the youth involved and feeling empowered. I think one of the most important things for Muslims nowadays is to reach out to non-Muslims with the message of Islam. And that means that we need to be trained to reach out with that message. We need to understand our message to begin with. We need to understand what are the objections that may be launched against our message and how to answer those objections in a rational manner, giving citations and proof from the other scriptures and also from our own scriptures. Now, if we conduct such training programs in our masajid, teaching the youth how to reach out with this message. That will make them feel empowered. It will make them feel ownership of the religion of Islam, because it will not be something that they are told to do. It will be something that's actually in their minds and in their hearts. They will be totally convinced themselves. And if we do this, then the youth will feel empowered, and in fact we will feel threatened, because we will feel that the youth are the soldiers of Islam who are going forward with that message, preaching it in a way that we couldn't preach it, because maybe we are not so adept at the use of the English language, which is the medium of communication in much of the developed world. And we will feel that they are doing a job that we couldn't do. We will feel empowered because we have empowered our youth. We'll feel much better as a community. And to me, the masajid need to do this to bring the youth closer to the religion and to make them feel empowered to go out and deliver that message to others.
If I may add that we shouldn't always have the attitude that the youth are always on the receiving end and the elder generation is always giving to them, dictating to them what to do. We shouldn't forget that most of the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, qualify under the title of youth, and many of them suggested their own ways of dealing with issues, and then Prophet Muhammad ﷺ approved of their suggestion. And what comes to my mind is the example of Mu'adh ibn Jabal. When he was sent to Yemen to teach the people about Islam, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ just asked him, how are you going to handle yourself? He said, I will refer first to the Quran. And he said, what if you don't find the answer in the Quran? He said, I will refer to your tradition. He said, what if you do not find it in my tradition, in my sunnah? He said, I will use my own judgment. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, approved of that. And that's what we should really allow our youth to have the freedom to move, with their X. I used in my last, presentation, the equation y equal ax plus b. The X is the variable. The Y depends on the X, but the A and the B are fixed. The A and the B are the Quran and the Sunnah. So once these are fixed, we should allow our youth to have the freedom to determine their X value and then move with the A and the B to determine the Y of present day conditions. So this is something we should always strive to do, and not to really diminish the ability of our youth when they are facing certain challenges.
I think we had to share on the point. Now, what I have noticed going around in many of masajid, I really do see most of the people are, we don't want to use the word old, but senior citizens. So then I do wonder, where are the young people? So maybe we need to look for those very attractive things in the Quran and Sunnah that will attract the people, will keep the youths who are there. That's one. And the next thing is that a man who prays 5 times a day, telling him that he must pray is what is called preaching to the choir. He really doesn't need to know that. You need to tell him to give zakat, because he's praying but doesn't give zakat. So you need to speak to him to give zakat, not to pray. What I'm saying is, the youths who don't come to masjid, and you know that, you've got parents, you've got children, you can't get them to the masjid. The masjids and Islamic organizations should start developing such attractive things and ways, and I don't just mean cricket and basketball and football, attractive issues, attractive things that will motivate people who don't pray, who don't dress Islamic, who are more fun of what goes on out there, to get them to come here. 2 things. Those who come, do the things to keep them, not chase them. Those who don't come, do the things that encourage them to come. Otherwise, talking about youths and you have no youths to serve is just a way to talk.
Okay, the next question. How do we speak to parents about marriage and you're not finished college but working?
So I have a microphone, so I think I'm going to answer this one, inshallah. Right, let's see back. So the topic of marriage, we could probably have a whole other lecture just on that topic alone. But again, I think what's really beautiful and what's kind of a thread that we're seeing connected with all of these questions is something that was asked in this question as well. How do you speak? How do you speak to your parents about marriage? How do you speak to your youth about coming to the masjid? How do you speak to the adults about having a great idea that they may not want to hear? We're constantly thinking about how to speak about something rather than stepping back and asking, how am I listening? Or how is the person who I'm conveying the message to receiving that message? How are they perceiving it? So for example, in the very first question that this panel took, the same question was asked to all of us. The word that jumped out at me was we. I didn't hear the word threatened. And yet another brother on the panel, the word that jumped out at him was threatened. Another brother may have heard the word younger. The other ones had heard older. We hear from our own worldviews. We embrace language and words based on where we're coming from. So the young person who is saying, I want to speak to my parents about marriage, but I don't know how to, because I'm young, because I don't have a job, because financially I may not be stable, because they think I'm not ready. Your answer is in there. What are your parents holding back from? What do they hear when you say, I want to get married? What does the masjid board hear when you say, I want to change some of the policies in the masjid? What does the young person hear when you say, you're too young, don't get involved? It's what is being heard that's even more important than what's being spoken. So I think it begins with us looking internally. And again, we look at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for the most beautiful of examples. We see that when he spoke to each person, he spoke differently based on how they hear. So one time when a man would come to him and say, how can I be better? What can I do to increase my iman, to be a better person? He would tell that person, do not become angry. And that person might ask again, okay, what else? And again he'd say, do not become angry. And a third time, and again he'd say, do not become angry. Why? Because he knew that this person needed to hear that. While another person may come to him and ask and say, the youth that came to him and said, I want to commit zina, I want to fornicate. How did he answer? He didn't say, go fast, or go take a cold shower, or don't think about these things. He answered in a way that the youth could hear and digest the words that were coming. And so rather than when the Sahabiyat that surrounded the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in that moment, when they got upset and wanted to tell the youth, be quiet, how could you ask something so difficult of us? Just as this young person is thinking of speaking to their parents and telling them they want to get married. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam calmed the Sahaba down and said, wait, so that he could respond. And he said to the youth, would you want someone to do this to your sister? Would you want someone to do this to your future daughter? Would you want someone to do this to your mother, to your future wife? And each time the youth said no, he said no, he said no. Because he began to understand what the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was conveying through his own worldview, through his own experiences. So long response, cut a little bit short now. For the young person that wants to speak to their parents about marriage, think about what they're hearing. What are their reactions based in? What are their negative responses rooted in? Is it an issue of finances? Is it an issue of age? Is it an issue of culture? Understand your parents' perspective and then speak to them, not in the way that you think is important, but in the way that they need to hear in order to understand. And make an appointment with one of our Cornerstone counselors because we can help you out, okay?
I would just like, I don't like to sound controversial, but I like to say things that will provoke the mind. My point is, why should parents wait for their children who are in college to ask them about marriage? I think parents should be asking their children. Parents should be looking at their children to see if they're ready for marriage. And if you can't see that, then ask them. Because you are the parents. That's why you are parents, and you have parents who got you married. So don't be selfish to your children and unfair to them, that you will wait for them to fall in love with someone because it's the natural nature process of life, and then tell them, don't love that person, we don't like him. You should be looking into your children on the hadith basis. When they're teenagers, you know what goes through the minds and the hearts and the blood veins of a young person. Look at at different age and different stage, different feelings. It is the parents' duty. Parents' duty to look at their children. It's one of the responsibility of parents. See if they need to get married, how they are, when you see the attraction to the opposite sex, and you see they're talking a little too much privately, when they see you to switch it off, then you know, well, it's either somebody, whatever. You should know the signs. You know your children. Don't wait for the children to ask you for marriage. Yeah, they should not be shy. They should ask you, but parents need to do that. And you look at what career they are, when they are, and don't wait for them to attain a career before they get married. That's been unfair to them. Then they may do a lot of haram things. And then you, the parents, will be responsible for that. You will also have to answer to Allah for that. So before you answer to Allah, you ask them the question. And if you've got to get them married, even if you have to finance it. I don't know with no law that, yeah, you got to be a doctor before you get married and you got to have a million. Listen, I was married at the age of 21. And I tell my boys and girls, I ask them every day to get married. They tell me I pressure them to get married. Yeah, my youngest child is 27 years. That's why I feel like a youth again. I speak from an example, you know. This is not theology. This is my life. And I asked them to get married in their 20s. And I tell my son who was 21, I say, if I were you, I would have got married when I was 17. I don't want to waste that time of my life and regret it when I'm 70.
Whenever a young person is capable to support a family, let him immediately go and get married. So Rasulullah put that condition because you don't want a person simply because he's in that phase of, to go immediately. There are many solutions that the Prophet discussed. This is not the time to talk about it. But you see, the ability of supporting a family is a prerequisite.
I think, yes, it is a prerequisite, but what we need to understand also, or the young people need to understand, is that even though that's a prerequisite, the istita'a, that you must be able to, or the affordability, what is the level of it? How do we determine that? Is it that we should have a Mercedes-Benz to make sure that we drive around, or is it we should have a house? I think that's where some of them do not get it, and they think that affordability is you have to have the best. You have to have mansions, and you have to have beautiful cars, and you have to be able to do this and do that, travel the world. So we need to define what is that affordability.
We have to look in this direction sometimes. There are rules and regulation as to the level of marriage. And there are times when marriage becomes wajib, compulsory. There are times when marriage becomes mandub, recommended. There are times when marriage becomes okay, permissible. There are times when marriage becomes makruh. And there are times when marriage becomes haram. So one situation doesn't fit everybody. And so as we are all saying here together, it is how we as parents communicate with our children and how they communicate back to us. What are the signs we are noticing with them? How best they can approach us. So there are the ahkam, there are the regulations, starting from wajib to haram. And if you are in that top two categories of wajib and mandub, I would say it is very urgent that parents and children sit down and have a fruitful conversation, putting everything on the board and have a fruitful conversation with their children. I know we had a culture where if you spoke to your parents about marriage, they feel that you have lost your senses. I think that is changing, where children can talk to you about any topic. And if they can talk to you any topic, I think marriage should not be tabooed the way we saw it tabooed. I don't think anyone up here had to talk to their parents, I want to get married. In fact, it was the opposite way around. So children are now more open. The things they can say to their parents, we never dreamed of saying it to our parents. If you say, I love you to your wife in front of your parents, they will take you to the nearest Obiaman. Because they felt something is wrong with you to tell your wife in front of your mother or father, I love you. Today, children will say, oh darling, oh honey, I love you. They will throw their hands around them, and you couldn't do that in our time. So times are changing. Let us not make this thing look so a taboo that children cannot speak. Children can speak on every topic, including marriage.
Okay, so we move away from marriage now.
Bring in women who can consult and can provide the female perspective of what's going on in the ummah. Because if you've only got the male perspective, then it's basically like using one eye instead of the two that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. Bring in young people, bring in elderly. So when we have an imam, when we have a sheikh, when we have a scholar, when we have a leader, don't lead in a vacuum, because it goes back to that sense of ummah and the sense of shura. And when we look at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, at his time there were some of the staunchest female companions that not only advised and gave input, but in the battles we see examples of Nusayba radiallahu anha who battled and defended the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam staunchly. We see examples of Shafayat bint Abdullah, who was a healer, who was a businesswoman, who was appointed by Umar radiallahu anha as the comptroller of the market. Where has this gone? Where are the women and the women's voices when we come to a conference like this? And we see that there are many amazing, and not to take away at all from the accomplishments of the men scholars in our community, but look around your communities, there are amazing women out there. Women who have studied, women who have traveled, women who have memorized the Quran, women who can also speak, just as at the time of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, women's voices were heard. So that's my passionate plea to those respectable leaders who are up here and all in the audience as well.
I'll just say one thing on that. I think leaders, if you're a leader, you want to train people to also be leaders. And that's the answer. Train, and if you have that vision, and I think that's what people with different professions and career, they want to produce what they are specialized in. So leaders should make all efforts to train other people to be leaders, and then you will want to train your projects to be the best.
I want to share with you something to think about, that there are leaders and there are people who lead. You know, there are many people who are appointed as leaders, or please forgive me, you know, I learned from this conference that every one of the speakers is okay to speak openly and with courage, and we should do that, and I respect that. The fact that someone, see, I will have so many people upset with me now after I say this. The fact that someone went to medical school or to dental school or to Sharia school does not make that person capable to teach medicine or to teach dentistry or to teach the deen, religion, it's not working, to other people. So when it comes to imams, we definitely need to have those who have been around and have a successful record of really infusing success into the community, to train prospective imams and not to just have a shoe-in type of appointment, because that will be a failure. So I would invite you know, those members of the community who have done it and have a success record to you know, hold the training sessions and to train others in order to be imams and be successful imams, inshallah.
Okay. So we will give the question, maybe Dr. Shabir can start this one. We have as our theme Islam solution in challenging times, and taking into consideration our problems, what could be our immediate solution?
Well, the immediate solution that I mentioned last night was our CPR, right? We need a community cohesion. What was the P4? The practice of the principles, and finally the R for reaching out. So these, I think, are 3 points that we need to focus on. We as Muslims as a community, we need our own CPR. We need to revive ourselves and be prepared to offer Islam as a solution to the others. On the leadership question, I believe that now our leaders, as Dr. Munir was saying, they need some specialized training, and that training to me would include sensitivity to our modern situation. So many of our leaders speak in a demeaning manner to women, contrary to the message that our sister so elaborately and so exquisitely has elucidated for us. Many of the leaders, sometimes they speak demeaningly about people of other communities. And we cannot have that. In our modern global village, we have to speak an inclusive language that shows sensitivity towards all people, so that we draw them closer and we do not cause them to run away. We know that our Prophet, peace be upon him, was described in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him, وَمَا كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Had you been harsh and hard of heart, they would have shunned you, they would have fled from around you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the other hand, has cultivated the Prophet, peace be upon him, to be that capable leader. And if there's to be a leader today, that leader has to be in a way similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to look at this leader and say, yes, this is the person in whose hands we can trust the affairs of the community. It's not just simply a person, as Dr. Munir was saying, a person who is trained in the Sharia alone, but that person must be a kind of an all-rounder. Just like in cricket, you have somebody who's a good batsman or a good bowler or a good fielder, but you have some people who are all-rounders. So we need the person who is an all-rounder, because if he's only good at batting, he will only shine when it comes time to batting, or he will only shine when it's time for bowling. But we need him to shine in all respects, and that would be a capable leader. We have to have training programs to develop the leaders as such all-rounded personalities.
To be able to deal with solutions, and it ties up with leadership. It ties up with leadership. Leaders are to serve and not to be served. And I think this is one of our current challenges, that Muslim leaders like to be served and to be served and not to serve. And this was a very much a sickness of the nation before us. If you read in the Bible, I think it was either Matthew chapter 3 verse 24, I think it was Matthew, in which it is said by Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, and he's talking about the Pharisees, because there were three groups of people when he brought the message of oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One was the Pharisees, one was the scribes, and there was a third one called the Sadducees. The Pharisees were the ones who engaged him in these little fiqhi details, because they were the ones who were controlling the minds of the people in a monetary, financial, profitable way. And so he said, I'm just paraphrasing here, you listen to them, what they say to you, but do not do what they do, because they put a heavy burden on your shoulders and they are not prepared to lift a needle by themselves. And you see them with their phylacteries, which is like Torah strapped around their head. Think about the little Quran on your head walking around town, that everybody thinks you're pious. And they walk in the marketplaces and in the audiences, they want to be served and not to serve. And we are seeing this more and more, that sometimes this leadership seems as if you reach a level that people have to serve you in one way or another, as opposed to you stepping down and understanding the needs of people, understanding the issues with people. And when we say people here, we mean everyone, whether Muslims, non-Muslims, brothers, sisters, whatever it is. Understanding their issues and really offer them something from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as you serving them rather than sitting down and having an attire or a looks as if you cannot touch anything, but everybody has to touch you to get spiritual electrification of who you are. And I think once we start to move away from that, it will bring a greater cohesion between the leaders and the one who are followers. And inshallah, this is what we see from the life of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whatever challenges come to him, he never sit aloof, but he was part and parcel of everything. Go back to the history, you will find that.
What is the first step a young person can take to get involved politically? And the reason that I know that we're out of time, I just wanted for you to let the audience know what is Islamic point of view on this, because we have a lot of people have varying ideas as to, we talk so much about civic engagement, and there's part of our community would say, no, you can't get involved. And then the part of the community say, yes, you have to get involved. What is your take on this?
It's interesting that my entire 20 minutes of my speech this afternoon was, I'm amazed to know that Muslim parents send their children to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, and businessmen. But I have not been seeing many of them sending their children to become politicians. When our Prophet ﷺ was the greatest politician, he was the leader, and a politician is someone who makes policy. Leave aside, you've got a lot of corrupted politicians nowadays, but that's why Muslims need to be politicians. So you'll be good politicians. All the prophets were politicians. They were not people for the tricks. They were true leaders, spiritual leaders and leaders of humanity. So, well, I gave a whole 20 minutes. You can go check it out. I gave lectures on YouTube, Alhikmat TV, on why. Because all this thing with bribing politicians, begging politicians, we all now start saying you must vote. But vote, and you don't want to be a politician. Yeah, me too. And if I want to tell you, parents, just as you see your children got ability to be a doctor, and a lawyer, and a teacher, and a principal, if they got the dynamism and the ability to be a politician, to lead the world and the communities and the country, and they could debate with Trump, and they could debate with Obama, and they could debate with anybody else, you support them. And imams and sheikhs, if you see someone in your masjid and school and community, you promote them, help them to become those people if they have that ability. Because Islamically, you cannot say that Muslims are leaders and should be the leaders, and then when it comes to politics, we say it's haram. You don't have to support the haram things. You keep quiet when they are wrong things, but you should be there to be part of the policy making. Again, you can check my lecture a little while ago online. I gave a whole lecture with Hifdhul Fudul, and the Prophet's alliance with the chiefs and politicians of his time to work towards community issues. So my answer is yes, you should, and my problem is people are not doing enough. And my last thing is that you should not be a politician, a Muslim politician, because Trump won election. Do not do it as a revenge to somebody. Because you don't hate a man, you're going to do it. No. You need to be leaders to better things in the country. It doesn't matter if Trump is president, Obama is president. You need to be good Muslim politicians, whichever country you can be that leader.
Okay, so that's all the time that we have. I think we have covered some aspects of family, our future, the youth, leadership, our masajid, our organizations, what they need to do for the community. And we have also looked at not only benefiting Muslims, but looking at other people. Because as you heard, I think it was Imam Sulaiman Hani said last night, that there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that the most loved, that we are all the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the most loved of his creation are those who are most beneficial to his creation. And he didn't say, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not say beneficial to Muslims only, but beneficial to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let us look at how we can benefit others. Let us look at how we can make changes, because this was the mission of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came about to make changes. He moved the people from a state of darkness into a state of light. He moved the people who were very corrupted, practicing all the evils of society, to people who became saints. They were good people. And that's his mission. That's the mission that we need to continue, a mission of change. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah bless you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to increase you in knowledge.